Okay, yeah, so welcome to Google Sheets 2. In Google Sheets 1, if you took it, we did mostly, basic things, navigating the spreadsheet, applying styles to cells and things like that, just setting up, say, basic data entry, and just getting into functions like the sum function, really basic stuff. But today we'll be focusing all on functions to do a whole bunch of things besides just like summing things like that. So today we'll just be doing a whole gamut of functions just to get us exposed to using different types of functions and like how to set them all up. And just so we can see that, not every function is just a calculation, that they can do stuff with data cleanup, they can make graphs and things, they can do all kinds of things. And we'll see as we go that any function that you use in Google Sheets itself, it's going to explain exactly how to use it, give, examples and things like that. So once you, leave the class, you can always just begin by Googling, how do you do this in Google Sheets? And then as soon as you have the name of a function that seems like it'll do what you need, you have it all available in Google Sheets to tell you exactly how to use that function, all the inputs and things you need to set it up and use it correctly. So that's that. I'm just going to stop my video because it tends to block up the video screen when I post the videotape of this. It sometimes blocks some of the screen, so I'm just going to shut that off. Okay, so today, so like I said, we'll actually be beginning with using functions to do like some data cleanup. We won't even get into like calculations and analysis yet, because a lot of the times when you begin with a spreadsheet, you might not have a blank spreadsheet and begin by putting data into it. You might have data coming from someone else, from just a text document. You might be just copying and pasting text off of a website table, if that's like the best way that you can get this type of data. So you can get data in all kinds of ways, and it might not always be the most useful layout. Like we can see on this page, we have a nice table. And by the way, the example that we'll be using in this whole class is just like a list of salespeople, how many sales they have made, clients and things like that, just as the example data. But what we'll pretend to be beginning with is this raw data, which as we can see, it's got a couple bits of data in a single cell. We have the name, we have the fictional branch, they belong to the East branch, the Midwest branch, or the Midwest region, the DOB. So it's all clumped into one cell. So that's not really usable in any type of spreadsheet application just yet. And then we also have a second table. It's not as bad. It's got all the people and all the individual data points in its own columns and rows. But we'll also need to see how to combine this data and match it up with the same names in this table. So we have to clean up this table, and then we have to find out, how can we combine two tables? How can we look up, the name Kevin Jones in the last table and mash those data points into, a table that looks like this, having all the data points in one table. So it'll take a couple steps to clean it up and mix it in. But once we know these functions to do that, we can apply, these functions to thousands of data points, millions of columns if we want in a spreadsheet. So even though it might take a couple steps to divide up Kevin Jones East 11/5/1980, as soon as we do his, since we have functions and we have autofill capabilities, we can immediately do all of these items in the table as well. We don't even get up to quite 50, but again, if we had 1,000 data points, once we fix up one, we can just do the exact same process automatically to all of them, and then we'll have a nice clean set of data. So with this, we'll just kind of hop into it. Like I said, we'll just be doing a lot of functions, so I'm just going to hop into one specific function to handle this problems. You will always need this function, but again, the idea of the class is just to see a whole bunch of functions, how to build them up, how to use them, and the type of things that we can do with all these. So with this, again, we want to split up all of these things. With Sheets and with things like Excel, we have a couple like automated tools to split up data, especially if it's in a nice style like a CSV, which is a comma separated value list. And that's basically if you have commas separating all the data points in the one cell. In this, it's not quite like that. Maybe this was copied off a website or someone was just keeping track in a text document. So we have commas, but we also have like colons and white spaces. So we can't just use an easy like CSV tool to break this all up into multiple columns. But one thing that we could do if we have that is we could, click on the cell that we want, and then we can come to data and then split text to columns, and we can see it automatically split it up based on that comma, like I said, and you can choose how to separate it. So like with this one, we could come back and say we split it up based on the comma between the name and the branch and the DOB. Let's come to this one and do kind of the same thing. So we could say come to data, split text to columns, and this time it's not going to automatically detect it because it usually assumes it's a comma. But we could say, it's not even listed, so we could do a custom, and we could say a colon, but we could also just say a single white space and apply that, and then we could see it kind of begins to split up all these data points, and we could kind of do that slowly, bit by bit, to get this by itself, and we could do the same with Kevin Jones to get East by itself. But we'll actually use functions to do this instead of those kind of automatic tools in the data tab. So the function that we'll be beginning with actually is it's called the split function. So again, from last time, if this is new to you, any function that we want to begin with, we just begin with an equal sign, and then we can begin typing. Since we'll be using a built-in Google Sheets function, we just type the name of the function, and then we can see it drops down any available, function name. If I was doing, sum, you could see you get the sum function, but also all these, special sum functions as well. So that's, hint one that Google Sheets gives you, just telling you what's available to you based on what you type in. So split is going to split text by some specific delimit that you give it. So to use a function, once we do equal function name, we'll just open up that parentheses, and then we can click on this little blue flag next to it to pop back open the kind of help box that comes along with any function that you use that's built in with Google Sheets. So we can see split is defined as what it needs, the data points that it needs. Is it needs some text, and then it needs something that's kind of delimiting it. So in this case, we want to split by like maybe white space or by a comma. So we can include those two things. And we can see down below each of these kind of inputs to the function, the data that that function takes in to do what it needs to do and spit something back out is defined down below in this little box. So text is defined, delimiter is defined. And then we have these ones off to the side. Anything that you see in these brackets like this, that means it's an optional input. So in this case, we won't even use it. We'll do these initial two things, and then we'll just close the parentheses. So anytime you see one of those optional things in the boxy brackets, you can just skip it, and the function will still do what you want, but it might just like assume some defaults or just, skip some option that you have available to you. So with this, so we'll pop this back open. So we want to choose the text to divide. So again, anytime we use a function and we want to input the data that it's going to use, we can just go ahead and click on the cell that we want. It's going to automatically type in that cell name. So it automatically picks A2. We could have hand typed that, but it's always, kind of quickest to just click on the cell, especially if you need to do something, like highlight a whole bunch of things. You could just do that quickly that way. So we got A2, that's the text that we want. Then I put a comma. You put commas between all of these kind of inputs to a function. And then we can see, again, helping us out, anytime we kind of advance down the function, it's going to highlight what's next to come. So we just did the text. Now it's going to ask us what is going to be used to split up the text. So in this case, since it's text, we'll put it in parentheses, and then in parentheses, we'll put how we want to split it up. So in this case, I think the best thing might just be to do a comma like this. And then we can see we manually did what that data split text to columns things was doing. Again, if you just have a CSV, it's easiest to kind of just use that automatic tool. But in this case, when we use a function, we can explicitly say exactly what we want. We can make tweaks. We can use optional things. So we have a lot of command when we use a function instead of just one of these built-in tools. Something new that we didn't see in any functions last time is what's called like a spill effect, or like a spill value. We can see that we typed in a function to this cell, and usually something would show up in this cell once we calculate it and get the result of that function. But we also see something spilled into the cell next to it. So in this class, we'll be doing a lot of functions that you just put a function into a cell, and then it'll calculate something and just have the result in that cell. But with a couple things, we'll do a function and it'll kind of spill out results, to the side, depending on how much space it needs. So that's just one type of function that can kind of spawn multiple cells of data. And we can see if we delete that, it kind of deletes both of them, because at this point, this one is kind of linked to this function that's spilling out. Okay, so we got that. Now we can just kind of reason out that we can use the split function a whole lot to keep splitting this up. So next we will, let's see. So we'll use split again. And now we'll just go ahead and try and split up this one. So we'll take away the DOB colon space. We don't really need that. So what we'll want to split up by is probably just an empty space like this. And then it takes the DOB colon and puts it in the left cell. And in the end, we'll just kind of delete this column. We won't need this, so we can just kind of leave it. But what we want is this resulting, DOB that comes into its own cell. So now finally we have one data point that's in its own column. This one's basically all cleaned up, and we can use that at the end of this process. But we'll still come back and clean up this one a little bit. So we'll come back in, use split again, and then we'll come back and take Kevin Jones East. This time we will, we have to split it up a couple ways. Let me hide this. So we want to get Kevin Jones, or maybe Kevin and Jones, as two data points. So we can have like a last name column and a given name column. And then we also want the East branch by itself. So in this case, we want to split it three ways. We might do it that way. So what we can do is, again, just kind of logic it out. How we can delimit this is we have a white space between all the kind of data points that we want. So we can say split it up by just an empty or a blank white space. And then we get Kevin by itself, Jones by itself, and East by itself. So now we have technically all that we want, but we'll still do a little bit to tidy these up. We'll like capitalize Kevin and Jones. We'll take away the parentheses because you might need to trim off some text when you get raw data. And then we might need to come back once we have a capitalized Kevin and Jones and do something like Jones, comma, Kevin, because as we can see, oops, that keeps getting in my way. On table 2, this is the kind of data set that we have. So we have Jones, comma, Kevin, so we want to kind of have the same thing. So that in the end, we can match the two. So we can have an exact match and take this Jones, Kevin data and link it to this Jones, Kevin data. Because when we use data, we have to use like exact matches and things like that. So in this case, let's go ahead and remove the parentheses from this guy. So now we'll use a new function, again, just to see a couple functions to do with text cleanup. This one is just called substitute, and it's just going to replace existing text with some new text. So it can find any text string and replace it with something else. And how I'm going to use this is I'm going to take this. Let me pop this open. So I'm going to take the text that we want to look in, which is parentheses, East, parentheses. And then what we want to do is find what we want to find, and then what we want to replace it with. So to begin, we'll just do, we want to find that open parentheses. And then what we can actually do, we don't even need to use it to substitute something. If we just have quotations with nothing inside of it, it's basically going to delete it out of this text string. So if we do it like that, we get exactly what we want. We just took it out. We didn't actually replace it or substitute it. We just replaced it with nothing. So that's one side of it. And now what we can actually do is we can do the same thing to get that closing parentheses. We could continue to just do this in the next column. So we have east without parentheses in this. But if you haven't done this in the past, if you don't know if you can do this, we can actually just stack up functions. So when Sheets and Excel, if you use that, looks at this function, what it does is it calculates, the substitution of cell H2 when replacing the parentheses with nothing, and then it just spits out the value. So that's going to be equal to east. So what we can actually do is nest a second function on top of that, which takes that east that this substitution is calculating. So I'll show you what that looks like. This might not be new to you, stacking functions, but if you haven't seen it, it's a little new. It's a little something to get used to. So what we'll do is we'll take this substitute, and what we want to do is this is the text that we'll be looking in, and this is actually going to be the calculated value of the initial substitute. So this is going to be east close parentheses, the already changed east. And then we'll take that and do a second substitution on top of it. And we'll say, go ahead and find the closing parentheses and just substitute it again with nothing. So now you can see we have just east by itself, and we stacked up this function a little bit. And this is not something you have to do. You don't have to stack functions. It can get, a little messy to have a huge stack of functions. We could just have two columns side by side, and the second column pointing back to the column to the left. But sometimes it is just easiest to stack them up and keep it nice and tidy and do a couple small things in one cell. So that's east. This next one, pretty easy. This is just going to be how to capitalize something. So if you have like raw data that's just simply not capitalized well, this function will just take that and capitalize it. So it just takes Kevin and gives us capital Kevin. And now I'm just going to autofill this way, and then I get the same thing with Joan. So again, we can autofill functions. So when I take a look at this function is taking a look at this cell and it's capitalizing it. If I autofill it by dragging this fill handle this way, I'm basically saying in this new cell, do the exact same thing to a relative data point. So last time I was in this cell and I did something to the column, a couple columns to the left. Now I'm in this column and I'm doing it, one less to the left. So I moved my function to the right, and it also moved my referenced cell values to the right. So that's how that's taking place. It's kind of moving everything relative to what it was in the original one. So I got Kevin and I got Jones. Now we cleaned up all this data. We did a lot of splitting up and cleaning up. But I do just have one last thing that we want to do, and that's kind of go the opposite way. We want to take Kevin and Jones and put it back in one column, but have it be Jones, comma, Kevin this time. So with this, we can see how to combine multiple cells values into one new one. So we can have one, glued cell value. So now we can do something like this. We'll do an equal sign, and then we'll just kind of build up the text value that we want. So we'll do equals. We won't use a function right now. We'll just say this is going to be equal to K2. So if I just left it like that, it will just give me Jones. So that looks good. But I don't just want Jones. I want Jones. I want a comma and a space, and then I want Kevin as well. So the way that we can combine these three bits is with the concatenation symbol, which is just the ampersand or the and sign. So that lets me reference two cells and kind of glue them into one new thing. So I could take K2, ampersand Kevin, and I get something like this. And then I'm just one step away from just saying, okay, I can do the same thing and just add something in the middle. Instead of pointing to a cell, I can just put in some raw text in the middle. So I'll just put in quotations, comma, white space. And then I get what I want. So now I get Kevin, Jones, comma, Kevin. And now we kind of have everything that we want. I'm just going to do one last, not so much cleanup, and I'm just going to take everything and just put it in these 3 columns to the right-hand side. So I have them all side by side and not all in the middle. But what we can do now, actually, is we've done this to Kevin's row in the table. But since this is functions and I can just autofill them, basically copy that same function and apply it to different cells, what I can do is I can highlight these like this. And then I'm just going to grab this autofill handle like we just did with Kevin and Jones when we, when we capitalized it. And if I actually moved it. Let me highlight this. And then if I grab this handle on the bottom right, we can see when I pull it down, it begins to apply the same functions that we had, but instead of applying it to this row, it's applying it to the subsequent rows. So all the data is going to be relative to the function as it moves. So it's kind of quite useful that way. So that's just a couple of them, but I can just pull this all the way down now. In fact, let me see how much I need to go. So it's like, okay, so that's the end of my table. And yeah, now we can see we did it all the way down. It looks like we have a duplicate of Kevin Jones. But yeah, we can see, it took a while to teach it, but once you know those couple things, you could clean up one of these, in a couple minutes, depending on how much data you have in it, capitalizing and cleaning up things. And then if you have a million data points, you can just autofill that function down and clean up a whole data set all at once. So we have all of these now. They all look good. And the last thing we'll do is just kind of copy these values into just like a nice clean set of columns on the right-hand side. So I don't have to like dig in the middle of this huge bunch. And maybe I can even delete this old data. I can just keep the new data by itself. So let's go ahead. We'll just kind of copy and paste. And I'm actually going to do a special copy and paste. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to click right click. And instead of just pasting, I'm going to paste special. And I'm going to choose values only. And the reason I'm doing that is we can see when I click on these cells, when I look at the function box, I can see this is all the result of an actual function, while these ones, it's just the text itself. And the reason that I might do that is so that if I want, I can now take all of this, cleanup data, all this raw data, and if I just delete it, we can see it still hangs around. Even though I deleted what the function column was dependent upon, now that this is just values, it's not dependent on that. So I can delete the old stuff. That's not, if I hadn't done that and like I did a delete like this, we can see this column gets messed up because that's a function dependent on previous column. So paste as special and values only is really useful when you do a whole bunch of cleanup using functions and then you just want to pull that data out, make some new tables, make some new columns and not have it dependent on that, all this old data, all this old cleanup that you just want to delete or something like that. So we can do this. We'll do the same thing with this quick. So just copy that. Go like this, except I forgot to paste special. And then we have one last thing, which is to get the age. So with this one, so in my final table, I kind of want the age. I have the DOB, but we kind of want to do a quick calculation to get the age. So we'll see how to do some stuff with the dates and things like that. And at the end of the class, if we have time, I have a whole bunch of stuff on how to do stuff with dates, days of the week, things like that, because that's always a bit of a hassle. People new to spreadsheets don't know how to like pull the fact that a date is Monday out of something like this. How do you do that? So we'll do dates at the end of the class too. Okay, so to calculate age, we can obviously use these dates. In sheets, you can just do math with dates. So if I do like today minus 1980, I will get, the time between it, and then I can find out how old Kevin James is, Kevin Jones. So I could just type in today's date if I wanted, and then minus 11/5/1980. But if I want this to be like kind of dynamic, if I want to come back in a couple months, or I want to use this totally indefinitely, I can use a dynamic way of putting in today's date so that next time I check it, that day will still be today, and it'll keep updating people's ages. So instead of putting in the date, there's a special function just called today that takes no inputs. It's just today. And if I just do that, it just gives me back the day's date. The reason that it looks like this is because we just need to come and say that it's a date. So it's going to change it to date using this menu, say that that's a date, and then it looks like what it's supposed to, 9/27/2022. So that's today's date. And now that I know how to find it, how to get it, I can just do some simple date math. So I can say this cell is going to be equal to today minus 1980. That gives me that. Now that we did that, we need to actually undo it because we don't want to get a date. We want to get like how many years between this. So let's come back and undo that. We can see it comes out to 15,000. What we obviously need to do is divide by 365 because that's giving me the amount of days between those two dates. So I can do divide by 365 to set up a little function, not 265. Like that, and then we get Kevin Jones's exact age in this case. One last thing that I'll do with this is that, when we think about things that we might want to do down the line, when we get to like this finished data table, we might want to do things like ask conditional questions, like how many sales did all the people, age 50 make? So just look at the subset of people aged 50 exactly. A bit ageist, but again, it's just dummy data. But the point is, we don't want Kevin Jones to have like a decimal on his age. We want it to be just like an even age so that we can also look at some people the same age. Because again, anytime we do things with data, we need to have exact matches between people. So if I have someone they aged 50 in 1 day and 50 in 2 days, I can't do at least an easy matchup to find people aged 50 because one is 50.1 and one is 50.2 or something like that. So we do want to clean this up a little bit still. We could just do this visually. This is the reduce decimal point button, but this just visually rounds it. If I bump it back down, we can see it still has the exact decimal value. It's just visually rounding it off when I bump down the decimal points. So what we can do is we actually have a function that rounds things off. So again, I'm going to stack a function. So I'm going to put the round function outside of this calculation that I made. So I got my round function. And what we can do is we can see the round function. What you need to do is give the value, and then the second thing, which is actually optional, but we'll actually put in this time, is how many places you want to round it off to. So in this case, I want to actually round it off to 0 places, so it comes up to the next highest or lowest even age. Oops. Let's see what we did. So this is what pops up if we have unevenly stacked parentheses. Let's see. Let's undo this. Oh, this is the issue. Okay. Okay, so we always have to check that we have even parentheses. And then I'm going to come in like this. I can put a couple white spaces in between just to kind of see what's in the middle. I think I'm still. Okay, hang on. My brain is failing at the moment. Oops. Okay, so what we'll do is I'm just going to take this and then we'll just go like this. We'll do round, take this nice and easy, not multiple parentheses, and just put a 0 on the end. So we rounded it up to nice to the next even place. And now we can pull this down. We can see we have a lot of people with exact ages as we go down. Nobody will have the exact same age, so we can't like look up all the people age 20, all the people age 50. But now if I round it, we might be able to get a couple people with the same exact age. And we can just take this column and just hide those decimal points as points since it's all 0 in the end anyway. Okay, so we'll call this age. Yeah, so that's the difficult thing when you stack functions. You just have to match up the parentheses, and my eyeballs just couldn't handle that, it seems. Okay, so now we have this all nice and set up. We can see we have Kevin Jones, his branch by itself, and his age as well. So we'll kind of move on the tabs now. We kind of finish the data cleanup. On the second page, we won't do anything on this page, but this is just to give an example that we might have 2 sets of data. And now what we might need to do to build like a final table of data like this is we need to find, Kevin Jones in this table, and we need to find Kevin Jones in this table, and we need to kind of concatenate all the columns in that. So we need Kevin Jones from this, East from this, his age from this, and then we need to stack onto that his clients from this table, his last sale, and his total sale. So we need to combine those 2 tables, and that's why we did this exact thing when we did Jones, Kevin, because as we'll see in a minute when we find out how to do lookup functions, XLOOKUP and Vlookup, really useful in Sheets and Excel because it's basically the same function between Sheets and Excel. That's how we can kind of mash up data from 2 different points, these lookup functions. So we'll skip ahead to table. And we'll go ahead and see how to use those lookup functions. I provided the table, but what we'll see now is how we could have combined it. Okay. So on this table, let's begin. I'm actually going to do this one as a bit of review. So we'll say with this one, we still want to add 1 data point. We got how many clients each of these salespeople have as of now, and we'll just want to have a column saying what ranking they have in the company. 1 has the most clients, and the last place has the least amount of clients. So we'll do equals rank. There's a couple rank functions that we can use. One is this one, and then the one we'll actually use is rank.average. This one is just going to say if 2 people tie, they'll both get like 1.5 and 1.5 instead of 1 and 1, just to kind of visually give a clue that someone is tied with someone at that same ranked position. So we'll open this one up and we'll see what we need to do is we need to provide the value. So we'll do amount of clients. So we'll say take D2. That's the value in the whole list that we want to find kind of the rank of. And then comma, and then my data, if we look down below, is the range with the data set that we want to look at. So the list that it's going to go up against to see its place in that list. So this we can just kind of highlight down like this, grab everything, and then we can see the last thing is optional. So we'll just kind of skip it and hope we don't need it. And grab it like that. And then we'll kind of pull it down and try and autofill it. And we'll see why that I did this, so we can get a little practice with one little unique thing about functions is we can see it looks a little bit funny when we get to the bottom of the table, we see we have a couple of the same thing. We have a couple 7s, we have a couple 3s, a couple 1s, and they don't have like the 1.5s like they should if it was an actual tie between two people. And we can see like this is both ranked 7, but they don't actually have the same amount of clients. So what might be the case is that the function itself is broken. We didn't use it in the way that we should. So we'll come back up and kind of take a look at the function. Anytime we click on a function, we get kind of highlighted on the table the data that we put into that. So the D2 is the value, and this is the data set that we look up against, and that looks fine. But let's come down this way and maybe like check this one. So we'll say, okay, this is the value of the single data point. And oh, this is the data set that it's looking up against. This is how the function autofilled that based on how we pull down that function. So the range of the data set got messed up from the autofill. And that's because, again, with that, like the relative and absolute values of cell references, since we just pulled this function down, we depended upon this cell reference to keep moving down one by one as we move the function cell down one by one. But we also neglected to realize this range, the data set, is also going to move down relative to the function moving down. So we used it in one case, but we accidentally included it in the second case. So like we talked about at the end of last class, this one we want to be relative. We want it to move down with us as we move the function in this autofill example. But this we want to be fixed in place. We want it to be absolute cell references. We don't want it to move as we move the function. So the way that we can simply do this is just put the dollar signs next to the cell names like this. And that basically means if I try and move this function, copy and paste it someplace else, autofill it, it's still always going to be D2 to D43. It's not going to try and move it relatively as I autofill it. So I fixed it in place. It's not going to affect this one because it was correct to begin with. But now as I pull this down like this, we can see now it changes like that. And when we check one of these, we can say, okay, yeah, this one, the data point is still moving down relative as I move down this column, but this bit is fixed in place. It's always going to be this bit. It's not going to move down with me. So that's fixed absolute and relative cell references. And that's what we call them in Sheets as well as Excel. So I just want to show that example, because that's one of the sticky things when it comes to functions, and especially autofilling them. You can easily get messed up if you just copy and paste it too quickly. Okay. So next we'll take a look at something useful, which is how to make drop-down menus. And then we'll look up those lookup functions. So to make a drop-down menu, so what I want to do in this case is have a box that I can click on, this box, and be able to choose any of these names. So I want it to kind of like provide me with options, like a multiple choice in this box, like you might click on a website. So I want to be able to easily click a name and not have to type it in manually myself. And then with that, we will use that name that we pick to look up the net sales in this table. So in this case, in this cell, we will be able to pick a name like Davidson Emma. And then in this cell, we'll use a function to automatically look up Davidson Emma and give me back the net sales. So we can do this kind of lookup. We'll be able to do that in a couple minutes. So to make a drop-down menu, it's pretty easy. So we'll click on the cell that we want to be drop-downable, and then we'll go to data, and then it's going to be called data validation. So we can click on that. And then we have there's a whole bunch of options what we can do. Data validation as a whole basically allows you to choose what's allowed to go into a cell, what data can be put into it. And this is like the kind of options that you could have. Besides this drop-down thing that we'll be doing in a second, one place this might be useful is if you have like a spreadsheet that you have like a lot of employees coming into. Because again, with Google Sheets, you can give people access to the same sheet. So you can have a whole bunch of employees maybe coming in, and anytime they make a sale, they add a row on the sheet so they can add up all the sales. But when you have a lot of people coming into the same sheet, you could have mistakes, you could have typos. So data validation is one way of saying, this cell can only have something from this drop-down list. This cell can only have, a quantity, it can only be an amount of sales. This cell can only be a date. So we can kind of limit mistakes that people can make if they don't know how to put in data, or they just, miss a key, something like that. So this is what data validation can do. But what we want is just a list of items. So I'm going to say list from a range, and then I'm just going to click on this. And then what I can do is just highlight the list that I want to be inputted into this. So I got this, click OK. I want to show a drop-down list in my cell, so I'll keep that highlighted. These two options, again, like I said, if you want to keep people from putting in bad data, stuff they shouldn't in the table, you can click to reject input. And then if they try to put in a date in the quantity field, they just won't be able to. Sheets will stop them and tell them that they need a date instead of a quantity. So it's up to you what you want to do. You could just say, put up a message saying, we didn't want a date, but you can still put the data in the cell if you want. And you can also put in a little bit of text. So when someone puts data into that cell, a little pop-up box comes up and says, put in the date that you made this sale, something like that. So you can put in some help. But we'll just go ahead and click save like that. And now we can see my cell has looks like a little drop down. And when I click on it, I have the full list of names that I just had. So we can see I got like this. And I can do this. I can delete it. If I try to type in something else, instead of choosing something from the list, if I just type, we can see it says it's invalid, but it still let me put something into this. But if we did something, if we went back to data validation and now reject the input, we can see if someone tries to type in, Jones, Kevin, but they put a typo, it's going to say you have a problem. It violates the data validation rules. And we could add that bit of additional validation help text. But that's, again, basically just letting us keep the data as clean as possible. So if I type in Kevin Jones, it'll pop up. I can also just choose names from the list. And you can see as I type, it kind of shows everything that begins with an A. So it's a pretty nifty tool that you can make. If we change things in this list, we can see that it's changing in this list because it's kind of like a function. I said this dropdown is made of the list of this column. So if I change that column, it'll also change in this list. So if you had a list of salespeople or a list of sales and you kept adding sales to that list, you could do something like this. We'll come back to data validation. I'm going to say, choose the whole column, and I'll just exclude the headings. I'm going to say from A2 to A. And when I say colon A, that just means until the end of time, all the A's in that column. A2 just means exclude the heading. So I could do that. And now it's the same thing. We can see it's Isaac at the bottom. But now if I added things to the bottom, if I add new data points to this table, it should continue to add them to my drop-down list. So it's dynamic and fancy in a couple ways. Okay, so let's go ahead and choose a name. And now let's talk about lookup functions. So now all we did was just choose a way, pick a way of choosing the exact labels of data in this column. And now we want to make a function that says, take this value, look in this column and find that value, and then find some associated value next to it. And we can choose any of these values. So we can look up Smith, Susie, and we can look up and spit back out the age, the region, the amount of clients, last sale, net sales, anything like that. So this is one of the most useful functions in spreadsheets. A couple lookup functions will do Vlookup, And then we'll also do XLOOKUP, which is the new one and the most useful one, actually. But we'll begin with VLOOKUP since it's kind of the classic one. So VLOOKUP will pop open the help menu and we'll say, lookup, what does it mean by a key? It means the value that we want to look up. So in this case, it's just this name that we have. Then we'll do a comma. What is the range? Well, it's kind of the table to look up that name in. And it mentions multiple columns that we want to look in. So what we'll actually do is this range is going to be kind of the whole table. Oops, why is that not typing? Oops. Oh, I see. Okay, so we'll put in this whole table. And what it's doing is it's going to look up Smith Susie in the leftmost of this highlighted selection of cells that we have. So the cell that we look up has to be on the left. And now we can choose any of these columns to spit back out some piece of data. So the last thing that we put into this cell is what's called the index, and it's just the column index of the value that we want to begin with. And column 1 is just column 1. So in this case, we look up in column 1 and we get Smith Susie. And we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll go to column 6 and hopefully we'll get what we want. Looks like we have a slight bug. We looked up Susie Smith and we hoped to get this net sales. So let's go back to this function and see, maybe what it's doing and why it made this mistake. So let's pop back open the function. And we can see, well, what's this last additional optional comma? And we'll see what this says. So this indicates if the column is like alphabetical or highest to lowest. So in this case, let's see. We want to say false. It's not an alphabetical list. So it seems like it's kind of assuming it's an alphabetical list, and that's why it's maybe jumping to conclusions and choosing the wrong data point. So let's say it's false, it's not alphabetical. And now that seemed to fix the issue. We look up Susie Smith and we pull out this column's data point, which is 1302. And now we can see the beauty of these two things in combination. If I jump to Anne, I can quickly choose a new name and I can quickly get Anne's net sales. So we've linked a couple things now, and now we have this nice little tool to look up something. And you can imagine a couple things with this. You could tie things onto the side of this to link functions on functions on functions. You could have a graph based on this cell or a couple cells. And then as you change the name, you could instantly make a new graph based on which salespeople that you chose. So when you link functions like this, especially in like a data table or like a data dash like this, it could be quite useful to just do lots of quick lookups based on these like little widgets that you make. Next, we'll do XLOOKUP does the same thing. It's going to look up a value in a table and give you something back. But in this case, we will see the kind of the advantage of XLOOKUP, which is kind of like the advanced with the new VLOOKUP. So actually, in this case, I'm going to say, let's say we have, actually, we'll just do the data validation again. So in this case, instead of looking up, having a drop down of people's names, let's data validate this cell and say, let's choose from this column. Save that. So now we want to be able to choose like the ranking of clients. And now maybe we want to look up different things about that. We want to say, who is the salespeople, who's the salesman that has, the 9th most clients. So we want to kind of go the opposite way. So let's see how XLOOKUP is built. So XLOOKUP, and let's go ahead and do XLOOKUP. We want to look up this key. That's the same as last time. The lookup range, this time we don't select a whole table, we just select one column. So this must be a single row or a single column. So I'm going to say we want to look up in this column. So we'll find the 9 in that column. Let's see what's next. And now this time we can choose any column that we want to the left or to the right of it to spit back out. With the VLOOKUP, you always need to look up on the left side of the table and then choose something to the right-hand side of it. The beauty of XLOOKUP is that you can choose kind of any of these columns and then look up something to the left, something to the right. It's totally up to you. You don't have that little limitation. So we'll look up, what did we say? Yeah, now we'll look up the name of the salesman or the saleswoman in this case. Let's close that. And let's see if it did what we want. So let's actually jump up. We got 0.5. That looks like we got Kevin Jones. And we'll just check a couple of these. We got Susie Smith. 9 is going to be Austin Brown. Yeah, so that's XLOOKUP. It's still new, so it's not always available in like the latest Microsoft OneDrive, Excel application, and I think it was kind of recently added to Sheets. So a lot of people still know VLOOKUP, but XLOOKUP is the new one. Does the same thing, but it just has advanced functionality. And actually, the last bit of advanced functionality that XLOOKUP has is that it can do spill values. So it can look up multiple things at once. So let's take a look at this, open this back up. This time we just looked up the name, but we can actually look up multiple things at once. So instead of just the name, let's kind of find everything. So we'll find everything in this column next to the thing that we look up. So if we close that, now we can see it's spilling out to the side all of these values as well. So we got not just the name, but we kind of got everything at once with it. So XLOOKUP can look kind of any way that you want, and it can find a whole bunch of stuff at once as well. Again, any questions that you have, you can always, unmute, put it in the chat as we go. Do a couple last things with this table, and we'll use the lookups again in a couple minutes. But if you have any questions about this right now, let me know. Also, I just want to show a couple last quick things with like the table itself. So one useful thing with tables is you notice when I scroll down, I have this frozen at the top. And the way that we can do that is with the View tab. If we come to freeze, let me undo it so we can see what this looks like. If I unfroze it, we lose, the column headings as we go down. So it's usually best to freeze at least the top rows. So freeze one row, so that looks like that. And we can also do the same thing with like the names. If we had like a whole bunch of data this way, we could do something like this. So we'll come back to view, freeze, and then freeze one column as well. And now we can go down the table, still have the headings, and we can also go this way if we have a whole bunch of data to the side and still keep like the biggest piece of info, which is the name associated with this column, as we look at the data all the way down this way. So you can freeze both columns and rows, so you can keep the table obvious to you as you kind of move about it. In addition to that little bit, we can also put on these little things, like the alphabetizing tools and things like that, that we can find with, I'll show you how to set it up. So I just undid it. So this is what a table looks like by default. We don't see any option to like alphabetize this table. So we can select data, and then we can create one of these. And it just kind of automatically chooses all the headings at the top and gives us this little button. And now we can kind of mix up the table. So we can say alphabetize the salespeople. So that looks like that now. And then when we come to this side, we can see, oops, let me delete that. When we come to this side, now we can see that this is alphabetized too, because again, it's dynamic, it's dependent on this range. So as we alphabetize that table, that's how we can get this alphabetized as well. Not only can we kind of alphabetize or do like high to low, if we wanted to look at, net sales, kind of high to low, we can also kind of hide things from the table. Say we wanted to look at just the East branch salespeople, if we click on this, instead of, alphabetizing it, we can use these down below to say, kind of hide all of these items in the table. And then we can see a bunch of the rows vanished. They didn't get deleted, it's just kind of hiding. And we can see from this little icon that it's kind of actively hiding it. And now we can just see the East people in a single column. And we can come back and switch to Midwest if we want. Then we just get Midwest. You can do a couple things if we want, everybody but the South, like that. And then you can come back and just select all, so you see the full table all at once as well. So there's a couple things with kind of just managing the table and looking at it and sifting it that way. And then one last thing I want to mention is how to make duplicates of the table. So say we wanted to we could, if we want, if we had a couple pages of analysis, a couple spreadsheet tabs of analysis, we can do functions that reference cells on different pages if we want. And that's usually the best policy, to just have one data set and just cross pages to reference it. But we can also do a couple things to make a copy, even a dynamic copy of something. So one, we could do something like this. And pretend that this is on a new page, on a new spreadsheet page. So I can make a copy of this table that's still linked to it, but I can just see it on a different table. And it's still linked to it. So as I edit this table, this should also be edited. So let me find this, and I'll edit this, and we can see this is still linked to that. So if you need a duplicate of a table that's still tied to the original, you can use this notation. The little squiggly brackets mean that it's gonna basically allow it to spill out and take up all of those cells. So that's just a special little notation with this that you have to do. You can do that. We also have some functions. So we have a function like this. And in this case, maybe we'll just find all the salespeople. Let's find the salespeople and the age and the branch. Like this. Oops, let me see what I did. Let me do that again. I did it too quick. So what do we want? So we want, let me do it like this. We'll do it like this. I'll just choose a tiny subset of it. So we choose the range that we want. Then we choose the column that we want to kind of alphabetize it by. And then we'll say is ascending. Why is this doing this? Let me try this one last time. 2. Okay. And let me do this again. Okay, so this function basically takes some range of data, this little table that I took, gives us a duplicate, it spills it out, but it lets us alphabetize it or do high to low in some way. So if I wanted to do something like this, I could get a second copy of this, but do it, youngest to oldest like this. You can see I accidentally got the headings. But this function, I won't spend too long on this, but just so you know about it, you can kind of get copies of tables and do different things to them. So that's one option. There's also this option, the unique function takes a whole bunch of items and basically gives you back each one once. So if you have a whole list of a lot of things and you just want to get a single list of each item once, just each salesman and saleswoman's name once without duplicates, you can use this function. So I could say unique, just give me a list of all the salespeople only once. So you can see I get that. If I had duplicates, they would be taken out. So unique is quite handy when you have a giant table and you just want to find one of everything. So you can get that way. And the last one is the filter function. So let me do this one. This lets you kind of whittle down what you choose out of something. And we just set it up. Oops. Let me see how I did this. Oh, I see. Okay. So again, I'm just kind of pointing these out. You can take a full look at these functions. I don't want to spend too much on these. But this function basically lets you take a subset of a table out, kind of like what we did with these buttons. If I want to take a look at, just the east, I can do it with these buttons. But if I want like a second copy of the table and I want to do it with functions, I can do it with the filter function. So now I can have a second copy of the data and just pull out the east people and then, do what I want with them. Okay, so this page is the last big page of, most of the good functions that we'll do today. And then if we have time, we have a couple things. The last 2 pages I just have as kind of practice and some sample data. If you want to practice once you leave the class, but we just have mainly this page left and a few minutes on each of these. So on this function, actually, I'm going to go back. So just emphasizing, now that we have these Vlookup functions and XLOOKUP functions, this is what you would use to combine these 2 tables. So that's why we needed Jones, comma Kevin to match exactly with the second data set, so that we can take an XLOOKUP function like this, say lookup this, and then we'll come to this table, lookup range and that, and then we want to find, the branches like that. Let me see if I got that. And yeah, now we can combine the 2 tables. So what I did is I did an XLOOKUP on Jones, comma Kevin in this table, and then I pulled this data point and combined it with this table like that. And you could just pull this down and do it with everything that way. So that's how you would combine those 2 tables like that. Okay. So now we have the full data table on the side, just so we can practice. And on this side, we have a whole bunch of functions from the basics. These ones will be kind of easy. And then we'll get up to like sum, SUMIF, counting, and things like that. And that's the really useful functions. Okay. So let's quickly do a drop down in this, because we want to be able to pick a name, and I'll explain what we'll be doing. We have a drop-down list in this box. Let me do one last lookup function practice. So I'm going to say XLOOKUP, look up this name, look up that name in this column. And then what do I want to spit back out? Well, let's get net sales in this case. And we can see we got that. So that's just my data. And now what do we actually want to do? Let's take a look at this if function. So the if function basically lets you ask a question and spit back out different things depending on the question or the condition that you ask. So we'll take a look at equals if, gives back a value depending on some logical expression. So let me open that up. We can see we need a logical expression, and then we need something that we get if that expression is true, and then a second thing that we get if it is false. So let's just set up a logical expression. So in this case, I have a list of salespeople. Maybe I want to do like a review of all my salespeople. So I'm going to say, I want to be able to look at a salesman's net sales and see if it's above some threshold. So I'll say my logical expression, kind of like my question or my condition, is it above 1,000? That's my question. And then simply the next 2 things, I just put something that goes into the cell depending on how that is calculated. So I'm going to say, if true, pass, and if it's below 1,000, fail, like that. So we can see now it's going to be dynamic to these people. Let me find someone, Vivian. So now we can see, depending on this value, this one is going to ask that question, is this above 1,000? Is this below 1,000? And then it's going to pick one of those 2 options that we had. Quite a simple application of this. This itself is quite useful. but you'll also use if functions like this to stack on to the outside of functions. It's useful a lot when nesting functions in a lot of different examples. So just, kind of keep that in mind. How can you do different things depending on the results? Well, you can use this simple if function, especially in combination with things, to ask questions and do different things depending on what you get. So that's that. Let's do a second example, and I'm just going to copy and paste or autofill this down so I can autofill data validation as well as my XLOOKUP. In this next one, I'm going to kind of stack two if functions. So again, we just get a little bit of practice with stacking functions. So I'm going to say, my question is, if this is above or equal to 1500, then I'm going to give them like an A as a grade. And then what is my value if false? Well, I'm going to put in a second if function. And then let me ask a second question. So if this is above or equal to 1000, then let me give a B, or else maybe we'll get a C. And now let me show you what this is doing. And let me just demonstrate what it's going to do. So a couple people have Bs. Vivian looks like I have a C. So what is it doing? So anytime you look at like nested functions, it's kind of best not to look from left to right, but kind of look at like the inmost function and then kind of like build out from that. So this is kind of the inmost function. It's inside the most parentheses. So kind of my question is, if a value is above 1000, then we would C, and then we would evaluate that. And then we would kind of look at the outside function. So if it's above 1500, we get an A, but instead of doing a value if false, we do a function which spits back out a value at computation time. This inside nested function is going to be instantly calculated. And then if I fail this 1500 A check, I'm going to go to this instead. So I'm not above 1500. I don't get that A. So I come to this side and say, I don't just get a B, I'm asking a second question and then giving out some plain text. So it's just kind of nesting two things at once. Again, it gets a little messy when you stack things up, but it's good practice if you want to get into spreadsheets. Okay. Just left some space at the bottom. Let me copy and paste this so we can just keep having these drop downs. Okay, so next we have a new function, the AND function, and we'll combine it with the IF function. So in this case, a question that I might ask is like if a salesman has above 2000, below 2000 in sales, but above 1500, I want to ask both of those questions at once, and I want to get a true result. If I pass both of those tests, then I'll do something. And if I fail both of those tests, I'll just do something else instead. So if I'm below 2000, but I'm above 1500, maybe I'll say, I want to promote them. And if I'm outside that range, I'll just do something else instead, just as an example. So I'll say equals if. And now I have to put my logical expression, but I'm actually going to immediately go to my AND function. What the AND function is going to do is instead of just being one logical expression, you can put as many as you want into this. And then what the AND function does is it basically takes all of those logical expressions, calculates all of them. And if all of them come out to be true, this AND function is itself going to give you true, which is going to be the logical test of the if function that it's nested in. So it lets you ask multiple questions at once, and then we can go back to the if function and say, okay, I passed all of those tests. Now, what do I get if it's true? What do I get if it's false? So I'll say logical test 1. Just like last time, we'll say, something below 2000, and I'll just comma and do this above, 1500. Let me close my and function, and we can see as I do, it kind of switches me back to my if function. So Sheets does a good job of kind of keeping track of which function I'm kind of in the nested, set of them, and which, like item in the function I'm on now. So I just did my logical expression, which was itself the and function of two logical expressions. I'll do a comma, and then I'm just back to the if function. So if I pass both of those, I will put promote. And if I fail both of those, or if I fail any of them, I will put, maybe I'll just put nothing. They won't fail, they just won't be promoted. So we'll do that like that. We can see, yes, we can see I got nothing because I'm not in this range. Let me choose, let's see who's this. We'll choose Stephen. Oh, he's actually too high. This one, Jenkins. Okay, yeah, so we can see we passed both of those tests. I'm below 2000, but above 1500. So now I get the promote. But anytime I fail one of them or both of them, I just get the nothing that I put in that place. So that's how we can use the and function to kind of ask multiple questions at once. In the next box, it's kind of the same thing, just the opposite. Instead of needing to pass multiple tests, we can say, what if I just pass one of these tests? I just need to pass one check, and then I want the result if one of them is true. And then only if I fail all of them, I want something else instead. So in this case, let's see, I have it actually put in. So it's the same thing, but just instead of and, I have this. And what I'm asking in this question is if someone is above or equal to 1000, or instead below 750, I want to review them. Obviously, they can't pass both of these tests at the same time, but they can pass one of these, and then I'll say review them. In the case of the 2000, I want to maybe promote them, give them a good job. If it's below 750, maybe we need to talk about, sales pitches, something. So I'm just using them to be kind of the same thing in this instance. I both want to review them. So I'll put review. And then again, I just have nothing on this side. So if someone doesn't fall into that situation, it just gets left blank. Let's go ahead and find someone to check that we did a good job. Yeah, it looks like Ruby, she did quite well, so she gets the review pop-up flag based on the function that we have. Okay, this next one is kind of like what we did with the nesting of the if functions. We can kind of ask multiple questions. In this case, we did it kind of in an ugly way by putting an if inside of an if. Like that, and that may be kind of difficult to kind of wrap one's head around if you haven't done a whole lot with nesting functions and things. But we actually have a function that itself can ask multiple questions, and it's quite long because we ask a couple questions, but it's not as nested and it doesn't look as confusing. And it introduces us to a new kind of class of function, which is like a function with an S on the end. So we have the if in the ifs function, we have the sum and the SUMIF and the SUMIFs functions. So anytime you see an S on the end, it just means we kind of ask multiple questions, check multiple conditions. So it's a really useful function to do kind of complex questions and calculations like this. So the ifs function, let's see what it does. So it evaluates multiple conditions and gives back a value that responds, that links up with the initial true condition in this list. So what we basically have is just a list of a condition and then a value that we spit out if that condition is true. If this condition is false, we don't get this value and we just go on to the next condition. So what I'm asking in this is if I'm above 2000, put promote in the box. But if I fail that test, I'm just going to ask a different question instead. So next I'm going to ask, am I above 1500? If so, I will put this in the box. But if not, I'll just keep asking questions. Am I above 1000? They did okay. And then finally, I'll kind of flip my math sign and it'll say, if I'm below or equal to 1000, because that'll kind of catch anything down to 0, I will put this grade in the box instead. So now as we check this, we can see we can ask a whole bunch of questions, and this is quite useful. It can do a couple different things depending on who we pick. And it's not as ugly as nesting a whole bunch of things like that if nested within an if function that we had. Useful to know how to do that, but when you have something, a built-in function like this, you don't really need to use it. It's best to just use the built-in function like this. Okay. Next, we'll get to the sum and SUMIF questions. Most of these I'll just leave as practice because they all follow the exact same way of setting them up, and they all do the same thing, and you'll get what they do once we do one example. So we don't need to do all of them. So we'll just finish with this, and then we'll jump to the next couple pages because we just have 10 minutes left. But now we'll get to kind of the most obviously useful functions, different types of calculation functions. And we'll look at the sum function, but we also have like average and minimum and maximum and accounting functions. So let's just begin by putting in the most basic function of anyone, which is just like its base function. So if I want to find the sum of something, we know how to find the sum of, let me begin at the top, like the whole column at once. So we can just do sum, grab everything, and that's the total of, all my salespeople. But what if I want to get the sum of just the people in the East branch? So I want to sum something up, but based on some condition. So I only want to grab, these guys, this one, and so on, only ones that match a specific condition, which is belonging to the same region. We know how to, whittle a table down to kind of visually see one thing at a time. And then we could come to this and do a function just based on this. But that's a lot of changing of the table to ask a whole bunch of questions. So we want a function that can do this instead of these buttons. So a SUMIF function, let's take a look at this, equals SUMIF. So it's just a conditional sum across a range. So we'll pop that open. SUMIF. So this is set up, the way this is set up is we want to input, the range is the column of the conditions that we have. So I want to choose the branch column, and then my condition is if it is East. So I only want to add up the East branch people. So I choose column C. I'm saying only if it's East. And then my last thing, which is oddly optional, but this is the actual column that we sum up if we match a column that we pass this test on. So if we do this, we can see we get just 15,000 out of the total 55,000. We could come in and change this to something else like that. Change it again. And look at that. We'll do one last one like this. Let's come and actually make a drop-down menu again. So I'll come to data validation, choose from a list, and I'm just going to grab a couple of these like this. Oops. Data validation. Actually, we'll just do it this way. So now I could have, chosen it by choosing the column, but I could just type it in manually too if I want. So let me do the SUMIF one last time. So choose the condition column, choose the condition. Now this time I have a dynamic drop down, so I can quickly toggle to see different things, and then my net sales. And now we can see I can quickly just change this and get these different sums based on what I have. So we could ask different questions. We use branch, but we could ask if someone is above a specific age. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. So let me delete this because this is actually a special type of condition. So let me make the whole function again. So equals SUMIF. So now I'm going to come in and say my condition range is these ages. And now what I want to ask is if someone is above, the age of 50, so 50 and up, I want to add up all of those salespeople. So the way to do this is a bit special. And it's sometimes I forget about it myself. And it looks a little bit funny. So let me just type it out and then we'll see what it looks like. And let me come back to it. Okay, so I'm summing. So I'm looking at this age column. My condition looks like this. So I have, it's odd, but I have in quotations the greater than symbol. You could also do this, or switch it to be less than. And then I have to use the concatenation symbol and put it next to my age like this. That's just the way that you have to do it. So you just kind of have to memorize. You have to do it that special way. But that's how I can kind of ask that question and use the math symbols with this, instead of just choosing, east like that. If I want to do something like this, this is how you would do it. You could do it like that. And now as I change my ages, we can see, I have no one above the age of 68. Everybody's above the age of 10, so it matches up with my sum all total, so that makes sense. So that looks pretty good. And then the last thing that we'll take a look at, the SUMIFs. It's basically just like with this ifs, it's basically the same thing as SUMIF, but we can just do multiple questions at the same time. So let me copy this. Actually, let me do this. So we'll put in two conditions like this. We say east, and maybe I'll say 25. So what I want to do in this case is ask a really specific question. Find the sum of all the East branch people who have 25 and up clients. So it's a really specific question, but we can do this with these kinds of functions. So let's take a look at what SUMIFs looks like. SUMIFs, same thing, just we can ask multiple questions now. Pop that open. This time, it's a little bit different. We want to begin with the range that we want to add up. So some range, we begin with that, comma, and then we just ask kind of the column that has the condition and the condition itself, and then we can do a second condition next to it. So criteria range 1 is going to be this one. So I want to say, which branch is it? Well, that condition itself is going to be from this dropdown like that. And now I just do the same thing. So you can see I'll space it out a little bit, got my sum range, and then in little couplets, I have kind of a question and the answer to that question that I want it to be. So in this case, I want to say above the age or above the amount of clients of 25, as I've said it. Although I've messed up. So that's the second thing. This thing is the actual column of clients. Let me see if I did that since I typed it kind of badly. Okay, let's come back and check. So SUMIFs, I got my sum range, kind of question 1 and condition 1, question 2. Let's see. Okay, just a little common typo. Okay, so we can see now we can change this. I still have my drop in. We change it to south, and then we'll test it. We'll say, someone has 59 clients. No one in this table has 59 clients, so it's just a check to see that it's kind of calculating what we want. Because when you make these big complicated functions, you just want to do a couple of double checks that it's actually finding what you want. You don't have any little bugs. Like we've had a couple times with like absolute and fixed values and things like that. So that's all we'll do on this page. The rest of these do the same thing. The average if and average ifs, same exact idea as SUMIFs, and they get built in the same way. So if I do average ifs, you can see it's kind of the exact same thing as the Sumifs function, but instead of sum, we just average, and then the question, the condition, question, and the condition. So that's kind of all the same thing. We can do the same thing with like minimum and maximum, so we can find the maximum net sales of the East branch, and then next to it, we could do a lookup to say who has that max sales in that branch. And then down this way, you can type in these functions, but these basically just count specific things. I'll do COUNTIF actually. So if we want to find in a huge list how many East branch people that we have, we could do that pretty quickly. I'll actually just do that now. So we'll come to this, we'll say, this is my range, all of these branches that people belong to. And let's see how many people we have in the East branch. So we have 12, and we can set up a drop down so we can easily toggle between the branches, but that's how you would do that. Any questions about this? This is the last big thing. We have just a minute left, so I'll just kind of explain the last couple of sheets. They have everything done, so you can just take a look at them on your own time. That was the plan to begin with. So I'll just kind of explain. So on this page, we kind of have some data visualization. I'll do one quick example of this so you see how to do it, but we see some examples. So this is called conditional styling or conditional formatting. So if we come to this and choose this conditional option, we can see we have a whole bunch of options on this side. The one we'll look at right now is kind of these scales, and these basically let us see like high to low the values. We could see on the initial example, we had like 1 at the low end and 10 at the high end. So we can do kind of scales like this that way. And when the data is all mixed up, you can kind of quickly find the highs and the lows, depending on how you want it. So we have some built-in like palettes, but you can also choose, you know, what's the minimum value going to be, and we'll say the maximum will be, you know, red. So you can define this any way that you want, and then you can apply that, and then you have that set up. Let's come back. Yes, that's just scales. This one, I have the functions typed out. So this is the Sparkline function. This is something that's pretty easy to do in Excel, but in Google Sheets, if you know about these and you want to use them, it is its own function that makes these little graphs showing like the amount of a value next to it. So you can take a look at these functions and look them up to see how to fully use them, because they have a whole bunch of inputs that you can do to change what they look like. I also have some down this way. This one's pretty easy. It's just kind of a line graph. And since the data set is 1 to 10, it's just a line like that. This one is the same thing, but because the data is all jumbled up, we get a nice line graph kind of showing the trend of something. So these kinds of things you can use to do little demonstrations of data and just some visual cues on the page. And then one last thing I want to mention with this, and we'll come back to like this table. And let's come to, okay, yeah, we'll come to this. So with this, with the ifs function, we have specific text coming out, but we can also change the look of that text depending on the value that comes into the box. So on this one, we could say, add some conditional styling to this cell. And we can come to this box instead of the scale box. And we basically want to choose one of these options. So this is kind of asking questions again. And basically what it's saying is, if the text contains what you type in now, you can make it bold, make it red, make it anything. So this is kind of the questions you can ask. You can have something highlighted red if it's a previous date, you know, behind today, or if it's a date to come, you can have it highlighted green. Kind of anything you want using these things. In this case, we'll use text contains. I'll just put in OK, and then we can just kind of see, we can change it, apply it, and now as I change this, he's also OK. He's also OK. Oops. Yep, as soon as we go to someone else, since that's not okay, we don't apply that conditional styling at this point. So you could stack up a couple on this same box so that all of these things get a unique style applied to them. You could just do one. So that's a really useful thing to just, again, have some visuals on the page that way. Last couple things, the date time page, I have all the functions filled in. So this page just kind of tells you how to deal with dates and times in Google Sheets, just like in Excel. It's always a bit difficult. So we saw the today function. We also have a now function to get date and time. We saw how to do some simple math between two dates. We can also do math between two times. And we just have to keep it in mind when we do this with dates and times. We just always have to double check that we have the resulting box selected as like a date time. It's possible we could have it as like a number and then, 5:30 minus 9 a.m. to see, how long someone was in the office. This doesn't really make sense, but if I come in and make it a time, now it kind of begins to make sense. They had an 8.5 hour shift. And you could style this a little bit beyond that to make it, with the HM and S symbols. So you can use this to style that. A couple functions having to do with like X days aways and things like that. You can get the end of the month, the end of next month, last month. To find out how many days away, we have a function. To find how many business days away, so excluding weekends, and I think optionally holidays, you could use this function. We have an X months away function. And then down this way, just a list of functions to take just a simple date and pull out specific things from that. So we could take this date and pull out that it's day 1. We could pull out the day of the week, abbreviated, not abbreviated. We could pull out the month as a 9, or we could pull out the month as, actually spelled out. And we could also pull out just 2022 by itself. And all of these use this text function. And you basically just use these little options at the end to say like what bit of the date that you want pulled out. So when we want just the day, the option that we give it is D. When we want like the month, we give it M. When we want 22, we use YY. So this you can just kind of look to and just know it exists and look it up if you need to pull those out. And then the last two things on this page, I just have a little quiz you can do on your own time if you want to review all this. Just asking a couple questions using all the functions that we had, all these conditional functions to ask complicated questions and pull it out. I have all the responses on the right-hand side. So as soon as you type something in, they should automatically pop up and it should provide an example of the function used to find that as well. That. And then the last page, last thing, I just have a whole bunch of made up sample data, just again, to have to be able to practice with. When I was teaching myself sheets in Excel, it was always like so difficult to find a huge data table with all kinds of things so I could practice. So I just made a simple one. So you have a whole bunch that you can practice with. Okay, I apologize about going a few minutes beyond, but if anyone has any questions, you want to go back to anything, let me know. If not, I have been taping this. So I will post the videotape and I'll send out a link to everybody, including all the people who can come in today as well in a couple of days when I can get that going.